Hey guys, Deslater Magic here with part 6 of the Strixhaven spoilers. Yes, it is actually part 6. I know I went from calling it day to part and started counting over the days at 0. But that's because it took place so far after some other spoilers I thought people would get confused. Apparently it confused some people when I did that. Part 1 was the 2 planeswalkers. Part 2 was about 38 cards. Part 3 were the Commander Front cards. Part 4 were the 6 weekend cards. Part 5 was the 3 from yesterday, so as long as you're like, oh yeah, I saw all those, then you didn't actually miss one. So anyway, today we're starting off with Sparring Regimen. It's a 3-cost enchantment, and it says when Sparring Regimen enters the battlefield, learn. Great. Whenever you attack, put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature and untap it. What? Excuse me, what? Just for attacking? You get a 1/1 counter on everything, no limit, this isn't legendary? Well, that's broken. Well, then it gives it pseudo-vigilance because at the end of turn it is going to be untapped in order to theoretically block with it. So this mixed with Luminarch, mixed with, Angels and Clerics, mixed with Victory's Envoy. I mean, you could just sit there and on like turn 8 have an army of 10/10s all flying, all with lifelink. I mean, it's just utterly ridiculous right now in the color white, and this just made it worse. Next up, we've got Symmetry Master. It's a 4-cost Rhinoceros Druid, because of course, and it's 4/4 with reach, and whenever a creature you control with power equal to its toughness attacks, it gains trample. So that's like weirdly specific. It's just like a fun, interesting card where you might get something else out of it, but then also it blocks air, which is very important for green. And who knows, Druid Tribal might be a thing. Next up, Campus Guide, which apparently is one of those creepy little robot things from Neverending Story 2. And it's a 2-drop, and it says, whenever Campus Guide enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top of the library. So it ruins your next draw step. It's a 2-drop. I mean, it does give land fetch and land ramp effectively to all colors. So you can't just say, oh wow, that's a garbage land fetcher, there's somebody better than that. Yeah, in green. I would say this is going to see a lot more interest in draft than it is in any kind of constructed, but you never know. White kind of needs ramp right now to get them 4-cost angels out. So next up, we've got Relic Sloth. Oh my gosh, a sloth big enough to ride on. It is a mega sloth. I love it. So it's a 4/4 for 5 with vigilance and menace. I mean, that's just badass. I'd rather have a 5/3 with menace, but, whatever. Next up, and by the way, most of these are Lorehold cards from now on. I think all of them, actually. We got Thrilling Discovery. It's a 2-cost sorcery. You gain 2 life. Then you may discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. Very nice spell. And see, they limited the playability by making it 2 colors. That's really smart. If they're going to push 2 colors or more as a feature of the set, as a main thing, then, stop throwing the power cards in monocolored. And in fact, stop throwing the ultra-powered cards in colorless. It'd be great if you did that too. Shadow Spear. Next up, it's Hofri Ghost Forge. This is a mythic. It's a legendary creature dwarf cleric. So it's a 5-cost 4/5. Spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. Nice. But then whenever a non-token creature you control dies, exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except that it's a spirit in addition to its other types. So in other words, it comes back 1 bigger. Damn. Well, assuming it wasn't a spirit before. Then it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. What, just in case white wants to resurrect it? I mean, I guess it's not out of the question, but that just seems like unnecessary added text to do something stupid. Just leave it in exile, who cares? Next up, we got Bury in Books, one of the few blue spells here. It's an instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets an attacking creature. Nice. And then put target creature into its owner's library second from the top. That is extremely not worth it for 5, and that's very not worth it for 3. Next up, we've got Curate. It's a 2-cost instant. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest back on the top of your library in any order, then draw a card. I don't remember what mechanic that was, but that was a recent mechanic. It was Scry, except instead of to the bottom of your library, it was in the graveyard. I think it was a Demir thing. Not that that'll help me remember the name, but you did get to draw a card on top of it, so this is just another stupid roundabout, ponder, opt, brainstorm. I mean, there's 100 of them. And I hate all of them because basically it just enables, control decks to go get more control and dodge lands, and for dumb abusive combo decks to run dumb abusive combos. I get it, it's what blue does, but black does hand disruption and everybody hates that. There's some things that really they just need to leave behind in the game. And considering the amount of ponders and brainstorms that are banned in multiple formats, maybe they should do that. Next up, Reduced to Memory. It's a lesson. Here we go. 3 costs, exile target non-land permanent. Yep, this is what we were afraid of. Its controller creates a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. Okay, that's actually garbage then. You know, having a 15-card Swiss Army knife of exactly what you need to shut down your opponent's deck at any time, aka lessons with the learn ability, they had to take a 3-cost, basically Banishing Light, and be like, well, they're going to get a 3/2 out of it because, yeah, this is pretty OP. So the fact that they took the time to water down some of these lesson cards looks pretty good, but like I said, we've already seen 2 problematic ones. We've seen, what is that, Look to the Past or whatever? Confront the Past, whatever it is, and then the land draw one especially. That's the number one that's going to be utterly broken. This, I mean, not too much. I mean, if you get rid of like a 12/12, okay, cool, but you still leave him with something. It's not too devastating. It's not multi-target either. Next up, we got Heated Debate. It's a 3-cost red instant. The spell can't be countered. We need to see that more often on cards, honestly. I think everybody's in agreement with that. I've heard that from more than a couple people. And Heated Debate deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, but not the person's face. This is like how to make a good red card, like right here. A good, fair, classic red card. The damage to mana ratio is not completely out of control, like Lightning Bolt, so they made it instant speed and said it can't be countered. If they would have made it 5 or 6 damage, they could have swapped it to a sorcery, or they could have taken off the cannot be countered part. And if they made it hit the player's life total, I don't know what they would have done to it. There's almost no fair way to do that because burn decks are just so stupid, boring, and chimp level intelligence to play. Which is why they printed this. It's like they did learn some lessons, not enough, but some. Next up, we got Strict Proctor. It's a 2-cost 1/3 flying, and whenever a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability to trigger, counter that ability unless its controller pays 2. So not a full shutdown, but it only costs 2, and it's a highly defensive card. I love it. I've always preferred these to just not be creatures in the first place, but it is a cleric, and it is a spirit. So actually that slots into this a little better than if this was just an enchantment. But yeah, suppression of ETBs can completely shut down a deck, so it's almost like too much if you're running like a reasonable deck, but if it's a really unfair, like bounce, yo-yo, frickin' garbage, black trigger deck from hell, well good, they deserve to have their degenerate repetitive crap shut down, too bad. But then I'm out there just trying to get a couple like ETBs to go off, and no. So they decided to still punish us all equally, but you can pay 2 to get around it. If you really want that trigger to go off, or if you don't care, then just let it go, otherwise you pay the 2. I like it. I like Ward. I like this card. Next up, we got Ifrit Flame Painter. Apparently, you could apply to get an interpretive dance degree at this college. So it's a 1/4 double strike. That could do some damage in an equipment deck. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. Let me guess, no limit on the mana cost at all. That's fair. That's not broken at all, is it? And then if that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead, because it would be pretty degenerate if you could just keep it going. It's actually pretty degenerate that you could do this once. But yeah, I mean, this right here by itself, especially with it being non-legendary, opens up the possibility of, instead of a mono-white boost ambush deck, with Magecraft, you could do a 2-color including red, and then use some of red's best boost spells, which I think we have the 1 cost +3/+2 Infuriate. I think that's still legal. So stuff like that, I mean, you could do some damage. You wouldn't even need equipment, and you could even throw in, 1 or 2 pieces of equipment just for the double strikers and the equipment ones. Usually you go either full equipment or you don't, but you might have to split the time between Magecraft and equipment just because there's not enough support for it. But you never know. Might be 2 different decks. Next up, we've got another one of the Elder Dragons. It's Velomachus Lorehold. And he costs a truly ridiculous 7 in the 2 most, not rampy colors. So good luck with that. Anybody else notice that, like, everything in Lorehold that's good is, like, 4 and up? I feel like that's going to be problematic, but it's more fair for the game. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, it looks difficult to play. But it's a 5/5 Elder Dragon, of course, flying, vigilance, and haste. Really? In the 2 colors that traditionally have first strike, it doesn't have first strike? Anyway, whenever Velomachus Lorehold attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. Hello. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to Velomachus's power, nice, from among them without paying its mana cost. So it's limited to 5 unless you start strapping equipment to them or whatever. And then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's a free blind spell, but I mean, it's 7. The thing you might not have noticed is that you can basically, in the middle of combat, cast a sorcery at instant speed because of how this is phrased. So, okay, you couldn't really plan it ahead of time, but don't discount the power of that. So not a bad card, but I mean, for 7 it is. Next up, we got Reconstruct History. It's a 4-cost sorcery. Return up to 1 target artifact card. up to 1 target enchantment card, and up to 1 target instant card, up to 1 target sorcery card, up to 1 target planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, and then exile this card. I mean, if you can even hit on 2 or 3 of them, good for you. You still got to pay for them, but it's interesting. We've had cards that do something like this that gained playability, but this doesn't immediately scream that to me for 4. Next up, we got Spirit Summoning. It's another lesson. Here we go. Create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token for 3. So, not great. Now that said, it's in the colors that can screw with sorceries that are in the graveyard and like clone them and recast them and that kind of stuff. So if you go get this with the learn mechanic, you might be able to get, more than 1 cast out of it because it'll end up in your graveyard. But would this fit the danger zone of a lesson that's extremely, extremely likely to shut down somebody's deck with just a very unique situational effect? Absolutely not. So it's another fairly safe one. Boy, we might just make it through this alive. So next up we got Blade Historian. Interesting extended art there. It's a quad hybrid. And it's a 2/3 human cleric. Attacking creatures you control have double strike. Damn. I mean, with him being a cleric and that being insane, the life gain heavy, very in the air angel heavy cleric and angel deck might actually even want to splash red for this, just with like a couple dual sources. You can obviously pay 4 white, but in a white-black deck, how likely are you to have, 4 white sources? It's not quite an automatic by the time you have 4 lands. But in mono white, oh, absolutely just run it. Like the white angel life gain, get to 35 and win the game crap, yeah, oh, absolutely put this in. Are you nuts? How could you not do that? Next up, Go Blank. That's everybody studying right there. It's a 3-cost sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards, then exile all cards from that player's graveyard. So this is your traditional discard 2 for 3 effect in black, but on steroids because there goes their graveyard. We actually do kind of need more graveyard clearing, if anything, just to shut down cycling. But, what they also could do is just, ban Zenith Flare. But with all the graveyard recursion crap that's going to be going on in this set, if that ever even takes off as a popular thing, yeah, something like this, not bad. But that said, I want to play my damn deck, but I'll take discarding 2 over discarding 1, and you get to see my whole hand any day. Next up, we got Lorehold Pledgemaster. It's a 3-cost double hybrid 2/2 core shaman with first strike. Hey, they put first strike on something. And it has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +1 till end of turn, which is huge combined with first strike, because you just straight up boost this instead of like casting Sure Strike, which also gives it first strike. It already has first strike, so that's just like devastating. So, boosting something with trample is hilarious. Boosting something and then getting a kill off of it is great, but it's even better to survive it. So having first strike is really nice when you get a +3/+0 something. Next up, we got Lorehold Campus, little basic land secondary duel here. Always good to have those in case of drafts, of course, and sealed pre-releases. So Lorehold Campus enters the battlefield tapped, and then of course you can tap it for either color, and then if you pay 4, you can tap it and scry 1. My god, is that terrible. I mean, it's better than a blank duel, but not by much. I mean, if you find yourself stranded and you really don't want to top deck another land, I mean, I guess pay 4. All right. Next up, we got Illuminate History. It's a lesson. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Then if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. I mean, it's the Wheel of Fortune. That is situational, but it doesn't shut down your opponent. It just helps you out of a bad situation, which is actually really how these lessons should work. Like I said, if you're going to dig into your 15-part Swiss Army knife of exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, that's pretty inherently broken. So it better only benefit you, and double points for Gryffindor if it only helps you out of a bad situation. So pretty safe lesson here, and this is a rare. So like I said, we might make our way out of this without too many toxic lesson cards. But I'm sure we'll get a 1-cost that says destroy all tokens or something, where it's just devastating to your opponent's board state under very specific circumstances, which would be unhealthy for the game in case I haven't outlined that 37 times already. Next up, we got Return Past Color with, that's got to be the first time that combination has ever been there, because I feel like I would have known if they were in that order. It looks out of order, but then if you really look at it, it makes sense. Okay, so it's 3 + 1 red + 1 hybrid + 1 white. Sure. Spirit Cleric flying, and when returned past color enters the battlefield, return target spirit, instant, or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, 4/2. So it's all going to be recursion. But for 6 mana, 4 flying in the air, you're going to want to go get a boost spell just to make this not complete garbage on the next swing, which brings it right back up to baseline. So I don't think this is a very good card, but you start throwing this in like Commander, you might be able to dig up like a 9-cost spell and just blast him in the face with it again. So, who knows? Next up, we got Radiant Scroll Wielder. It's a 4-cost 2/4 Dwarf Cleric, and instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, which the last time they did that was a batshit crazy overpowered card worth about $30. What was that, Monastery Mentor, or was it the other one? I don't know, whatever. But yeah, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile an instant and sorcery card at random from your graveyard. There you go. There's the downside. You kind of need those. But boy, wouldn't that be a pain to do in paper? I mean, this is like the, hey, it's a pain to do in paper thing. And we haven't even seen the count your library one card at a time card that Mark said is coming. So if there's like 5, well, you got to go find, I guess, a 10-sided die and then line them up, assign them each 2 numbers. It's just, what a pain. Anyway, once you've exiled a card at random, you may cast the card this turn. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. But then what do you do if you don't cast it? I assume leave it in exile. That's the last known location of it. So, I mean, interesting card. That lifelink is just nuts. This might be able to single-handedly keep you alive. And it's also a creature, and it's also a cleric. Next up, Lorehold Excavation. It's a 2-cost enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, mill a card. If a land card was milled this way, you gain 1 life. Otherwise, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Oh, another countdown ticker. At least it's not in black. Or not a countdown, a pinger, a life pinger. And then if you pay 5, exile a creature card from your graveyard, and of course create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. I should point out, not flying. None of these spirits are flying. Good. Wasn't there a card that gave all spirits double strike or all creatures double strike or something? Yeah. Next up, we got Quintorius, Field Historian. It's a 5-cost legendary creature elephant cleric. Spirits you control get +1/+0. That's another reason they're not in the air. And whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. As I'm sure you did, I initially misinterpreted that as, oh, so you just Tormods and then here have 20 tokens. No, it's whenever 1 or more singular triggers. So if 5 leave at a time, that's 1 trigger. If 1 leaves, that's 1 trigger. Now, there are a couple effects in the game, whether they're in standard or not, I'm not sure, that remove a card 1 at a time. You just like tap it or whatever and maybe pay some mana or, whatever. So you could turn a cheap little, graveyard stripper into a 3/2 generator. Or, well, in this case, a 4/2 generator because spirits you control get +1. Pretty strong Lorehold card, but I mean, once again, what is with Lorehold and costing 4 and up? I mean, geez, this thing's 5. It's not even that good. Next up, Stonebound Mentor. It's a 3-cost 3/3 Spirit Advisor, and whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, scry 1. So, I mean, in the same deck archetype, I just don't think it's, good or worth playing, but we'll see. Next up, we got Academic Probation. That's fantastic. Oh, here we go. A 2-cost modal rare. Okay. Hopefully this one's not too bad. Choose 1. Choose a non-land card name. Opponents can't cast spells with the chosen name until your next turn. So it's not even permanent. That's just stupid. And you can't do it in response. It won't stop it from resolving. Cast means attempt to cast, not resolve. So that's garbage. And then choose target non-land permanent. Until your next turn, it can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. Let me just go back to the first one. If it's instant speed, they're just going to cast it in response. And then theirs will go off first. And then if you respond to their spell that you don't want them to cast, it resolves anyway. So this does basically nothing unless you want to stop a creature or a sorcery from being summoned on their turn. And then you only get 1 turn. Well, then the bottom one, I mean, can't attack or block, activated abilities can't be activated. Okay, but it's only for 1 turn. So I don't know, it might buy you the time you need. I mean, it's like, how did you get the learn trigger then? And then you still had mana for this? Well, then you, I guess, didn't. If you're swinging against an open board, okay, it keeps the board open. Just name a creature they have, or I don't know. It's just dumb. It's sorcery speed, so you can't even jam the creature on their turn. I mean, this just isn't a good card. Good, I was worried. Next up, Semester's End. Oh boy, it's a 4-cost instant, and exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of the next end step, return each of them to the battlefield under its owner's control, which of course resets the planeswalker's loyalties, but since it's your end step, you can't then activate their abilities again. Otherwise, you would be able to, actually. Then each of them enters the battlefield with an addition 1/1 counter on it or an additional loyalty if it's a planeswalker. That's huge. Well, normally I'd say this is an exciting, interesting card, but it's like an absolute #1 Super Friends enabler. And then also, it just reminds me of Yorion, which that deck can go straight to hell. So, kind of getting some bad vibes from this card, but I don't think people will actually play it too heavily. Next up, Thunderous Orator. It's a 2-cost 2/2 with Vigilance. I'm starting to think that isn't Lorehold. Don't they not do the orchestra thing? Isn't that a different one? I don't know, probably not. Honestly, they probably all have music degrees available. But it has vigilance, and when it attacks, it gains flying until end of turn. Nice. If you control a creature with flying, though. So it's like a reverse Odric. The same is true for first strike. Oh, it really is a reverse Odric. Boy, I actually didn't read the rest of that. So this is also true for first strike, double strike, death touch, indestructible, lifelink, menace, and trample. AKA going the full Odric. So he himself matches anything else that's out, but he's not a cleric, he's a wizard. Well, I mean, in the right equipment deck, yeah, you could get this thing going. Next up, Dueling Coach. It's a 4-cost 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. And then if you pay 5 and tap it, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it. So at least you can't start from 0 and just start boosting it. So you can't just do a whole row of, some god-awful token, which is usually what people do with that effect. By the way, this looks like a Silver Quill card. They're kind of sneaking some in, but it's hard to tell because it was so many Lorehold cards that you almost assume the white ones are, but I don't think this is. So, I mean, this is fair. It costs 4. It's not that big. And, I mean, you get the ETB, and then you might get a little bit of mileage out of it with an effect that's already insane that requires a little bit of a deck build around, and like, the mana cost is going to cost you the whole turn. But it might be worth it. Now compare this to the 4-cost white landfall enchantment that's just, a land entered the battlefield. Everybody gets 1/1 counter. Or you can generate a cat. That's like 3 times as powerful as this. I mean, with this costing 5 and then having the requirement, I mean, this is so much worse than that card. So it's like, unless you're playing Human or Monk, just play that, But still, good solid card. It just outlines how broken that other one is. So next up, we got Beaming Defiance. It's probably another Silver Quill, because who else dresses like that? It's a 2-cost instant. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains hexproof till end of turn. Nice. I don't like white having basically a counter spell, but if you just replaced it with the word indestructible, it would be a classic white spell. So it's not that far off, although it stops it from being targeted by absolutely anything, which goes much further than indestructible, but God help you if it gets into combat. Hexproof ain't gonna save you. So the fact that it's like a boost where you'd want to kind of ambush somebody in combat and, kill their creature, maybe get some lifelink, maybe first strike, maybe survive it, whatever. Okay, that's one thing. And then hexproof is like you're saving it from an attack by the enemy or an ability. Well, those are 2 different things, so you're very rarely going to get the benefit of both, where we already have a card that I believe costs 2 that's +2/+0 and lifelink till end of turn. So my solution is run both. If it's a draft and you're running White Ambush, absolutely draw this, but this isn't quite as good unless you really want that, 2-option utility, and there's almost nothing in white that does something like this, so, I probably would end up putting it in my deck. Next up, Ageless Guardian. It's a 2-cost 1/4. Straight up, also a spirit, though. And it doesn't have defenders, so, I mean, pretty nice. And these really big defensive cards are just an absolute block cow, as I call them, in draft and in sealed. Because you do this turn too, they are not getting through. You just bought yourself many, many, many turns. And if you can get a Spirit Tribal going with some boosts, you're going to get some late game value out of it too. That or equipment, because remember, equipment's always in play when it's white-red right now. Oh, in standard constructed, not at all in draft. That's a completely different set. Next up, Potion of Empowerment. Oh, did I not totally predict that we would see a 5 different color cycle of potions? I do believe I guessed that, and I bet you this is a cycle. So anyway, it's a 1-cost green instant. You gain 2 life, and then target creature gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Oh, that's good. So a bare minimum +2/+2 instant speed. I really feel like, for fairness, if they're going to make it cost 1, it should have been a sorcery, so that your opponent has a little bit of time to prepare for it. But I mean, otherwise, doing this in the middle of combat, unless you have first strike lifelink, you're not really going to get a big benefit out of this unless you just bombed life in your first main phase, which is not the easiest thing to do, but in green it is compared to white, because white traditionally does run off of lifelink, and then you got to go to combat first. But I mean, green-white, why not? So yeah, this is an insanely good card, just unbelievably good. And I'm really happy for the purposes of draft that they put this in the uncommon slot. Even if it was common, though, it's how easy is it to gain life? But if you did have a way, this would just be devastating. Then again, we've got the +4/+4. What is that, Titanic Growth or something equivalent to it? The one with the giant cat on it. Yeah, I have 1 drafts because of that. Just they let a 1/1 through. I'm like, well, actually, it's 5, and I just win. So when it comes to this one, handle with care. It could be even bigger. So that is it. Those are all the spells for today. Really nothing too bad in the lesson slot. I think we're about halfway through the spoilers, so we might just make our way through this without lesson and learn being horrible. I don't know. I say it now, but they usually put the most broken stuff on the last couple days so that people can at least pretend to get excited about this, but it looks like a pretty fair, very high cost set that's not going to have a big impact on standard, except for a couple highly problematic cards that we've already seen that already boost a deck that's already tier 1, which is something you really just never want to do. But at the time they designed these cards and play tested them, they had no idea what the meta would be. They don't really have any idea what the meta will be at any given point in time ever. So that's it for today. If I have time after I shoot the April Fool's video tonight, I'll get a top 10 most valuable fancy frame, whatever the hell, mystical thing card things. Yeah, it's coming eventually. I'm like 2 weeks behind for shooting a really, really needed prepper channel thing. I don't remember the name of anything today. I've been so tired all day. I literally slept for like 11 hours, got up super late, got nothing productive done. I just slammed some caffeine, 180 milligrams, and I'm like barely awake. I actually went around my house waving around a carbon monoxide detector despite the fact that I don't have anything in my house that would generate it. I don't know. Maybe I just had too much sugar yesterday. It's just catching up now. I have no idea. I felt like shit all day today. Hopefully I don't have COVID, but I don't remember fatigue being on the front line of the initial symptoms. And honestly, I feel fine. Like my immune system would be on fire. And I think I already had COVID. So I'll keep you posted on how I feel tomorrow. Because if I feel real weird, I got to go, I don't get a blood test, COVID test, see if I have mono. Who the hell knows? I don't know. I'm just going to slam some B vitamins and see what happens. But thanks for watching this video that I was half awake for. And I'll see you guys next time.